I know a lot of you out there watching right now are big fans of the GameCube, and of course it'd be. It's got a great library and it's got a really fantastic controller, but playing the GameCube on a modern TV, well, that typically doesn't really look the best. And that's why a lot of people that play Super Smash Bros. Melee typically go out and get old CRT TVs so that they can actually play it the proper way it was originally intended. But what if I were to tell you that there was a new method, something that looks just as good as a CRT and in some ways, maybe even sharper? This is something that Castlemania Games sent in to us. It's called the GCHD and it's from a company called EON. This right here is supposed to give you HDMI out on your regular old GameCube. How does it work? And does it work that well? Well, let's find out. I've seen a number of products out there that have claimed to improve the resolution of your older video game consoles. More often than not, these devices usually require you to open up the consoles themselves and solder something inside. And in other cases, they are large outside boxes that require their own power input. But that is exactly what makes the GCHD so interesting. The folks at EON were capable of making a product that is so elegantly designed that you would be forgiven for thinking it was something directly from Nintendo. This really is one of the best devices I've ever seen to get the highest quality image out of your GameCube. The GCHD is a very tiny device, and it has a very small impact on your whole layout of your GameCube setup as it probably exists right now. You will also find that it doesn't require external power, which is a really nice feature. All the energy it needs, it gets directly from the GameCube itself. To use the device, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is just plug it up directly to the back of your GameCube, but when you're looking back there, you might notice something that may change the way you look at this device, because you may possibly have a GameCube that doesn't work with a GCHD. There are a whole bunch of GameCube variations out there with different colors and art designs, but when it comes to the actual internal components and some of the external features, well, that's something that most people didn't realize changed halfway through the lifespan of the console. The earlier models of GameCubes that were built have a model number on the bottom that says DOL-001. These are the models that will work with the GCHD because they have a digital AV out on the back. You need this because not only do you need that port, but you also need the analog AV port. The GCHD plugs up to both ports at the exact same time. Newer models of the GameCube have a model number of DOL-101, and an easy way to identify if you have one of those models is just to look at the back. If all you have is an analog AV out and not a digital one, well, unfortunately, you have a GameCube that won't work with a GCHD. If you do happen to have a GameCube that this works with, one word of warning for someone that's been there before, make sure that when you're pushing it in, you push it in all the way until you hear a snap. You may feel like you're about to break the GameCube, but don't worry, it just needs to fit in there nice and snug. The GCHD replaces both video out ports with a single HDMI out, but unfortunately the HDMI out doesn't stick out directly to the back of the GameCube, it sticks out to the left. That means when you go to plug in an HDMI cable, it basically needs a little bit of clearance space to the direct left of it, meaning you can't take the GameCube and stick it up directly against a wall. Not a big deal, I suppose, but it's just one oversight that kinda sucks. But believe me folks, once you play games this way, you're never gonna wanna go back. Most gamers out there typically play the GameCube with the cables that came bundled with the system. Those are composite cables. Regular AV, you've seen them on a bunch of other systems as well. But there were other cables that were sold separately for the GameCube that were component cables. These gave you a far sharper image. But unfortunately, those cables were hard to come by, and if you even managed to find them nowadays, they'd likely be pretty expensive. So for the majority of gamers out there, you were playing a GameCube game through this one single line right here, this yellow one. All your visual information went right through here and it compressed it down and, well, it kind of made things look a little bit soft and you really didn't get the highest quality image out of it. All the images that would be coming out of your GameCube were interlaced, which basically means that it didn't look as good as something that may have been, let's say, progressive, which is something the GameCube is capable of, but few took advantage of. The GCHD makes full use of the progressive scan mode that some games actually utilized. Now, the best way to find out if the game actually features progressive scan mode, take a look at the back of the box of the GameCube game to the top left, and it might actually say it up there. And even if it doesn't, chances are the game might actually utilize it. When you insert the game you want to play and start up the GameCube, at the very beginning you'll see an intro animation with the GameCube logo. During this animation, hold down the red B button on your GameCube controller, and then as the game starts up, if it does support progressive scan mode, you'll see an option at the bottom of the screen that asks you if you want to turn it on or turn it off. If all you were looking to do was run GameCube games in progressive scan mode over an HDMI signal, well, this is it, you're done. The base settings for the GCHD are really well set up, so you don't really need to do much else. But if you're looking to tinker around with the image a little bit more, well, there's extra options you can access by using an infrared-based universal remote. Unfortunately, the GCHD doesn't come with its own remote, and to access any of the main menu functions, you can't just use a GameCube controller. So the only way to do it is to use a universal remote control, and the only one we had was this comically oversized one for people that are hard of sight. So that's the thing. One of the problems you might run into while trying to access the settings of the GCHD is, well, the IR sensor to actually use the remote control is on the direct top of it. That means that it's actually on the back of the GameCube once it's plugged up, so you kind of have to awkwardly stick your controller back there to actually access any of these options. But once it's all set up, you really don't have to do much else with it, so you just set it up once and then basically just forget about it. But if you do really want to dive into the system settings, there's a lot of options on here to really customize the image exactly how you want it to look, including adding scan lines, which gives you that really nice CRT feel even though you're not really using a CRT anymore. The only setting I would personally recommend you change is that whenever the resolution would actually switch in the game, and this would happen a lot with older video games, well, sometimes it would just show a little warning to tell you what the resolution was in the game that you were playing. I don't think that's really important to see, so I turned it off. Now first, let's take a look at a couple of games that offered only interlace support and not progressive scan. First up is From Russia with Love, the last game and appearance that Sean Connery ever made in pretty much anything. This game is kind of not amazing in most parts, but it is a pretty interesting experience and does feature the last performance from Sean Connery before he retired. This is a really interesting game to see, and it really does look pretty cool in certain spots. And even though it is interlaced, you can still see a marked improvement over the original connectivity method and the new one with the GCHD. The second game we're going to show you that doesn't utilize progressive scan mode is DreamMix TV World Fighters. Now, by looking at this from the outset, you're probably thinking, boy, that looks a lot like Super Smash Bros., but it really isn't. It's a completely different rule set, it doesn't have the same kind of really good functioning gameplay, and although you may recognize a bunch of the characters, it's not really a game I would really recommend too much because, well, it just seems to be a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the way it actually plays. Regardless though, the use of interlace mode here means that you're not going to get the sharpest, cleanest image, and with both 007 in this game, the image seemed to vibrate a little bit, and the only way that we could actually prevent that from happening was by turning on the scanline modes, which heavily reduced it. Regardless though, this is something we only saw while playing interlace games and not progressive ones. But I'm not really gonna shout out that every single game on the GameCube that is worth playing is progressive, but in the instances that we looked at it, most of them were. First up on our list of progressive scan capable games is Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem. This is one of those fun games that doesn't tell you on the back of the box that it actually has progressive scan mode, but it does and it works quite well. Now something else that this game does is it has the ability to go into widescreen, but it is my own personal recommendation to you not to turn that on. Yes, you might see more image of the game left and right, but unfortunately the game is actually being compressed down and stretched out to get that widescreen image. And what that typically means is that the image you're getting out of the GameCube is a little bit lower quality than what you typically would have got from a traditional 4:3 image. When it comes to video games of that era, typically I just stick to 4:3 because when it comes to widescreen, it's always just looked a lot better in high definition. And as for the game Eternal Darkness itself, I really don't want to spoil too much, but if you've never played it, it's worth taking a look at. It does a lot of really crazy things to mess with the gamer as you're playing, and it is a real fun title to try out. Next up is Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. This is a game that's exclusive to GameCube and never saw a release anywhere else. Now what's interesting about this game is that not only are you getting a remastered version of Metal Gear Solid utilizing the Metal Gear Solid 2 engine, but you're also getting all of the cutscenes redone by a film director from Japan who is known for making really cool and intense action movies. And the best way to play this game on the GameCube is using the GCHD. When you compare it against the interlaced image side by side, it really is just astonishing. You'll be able to see hidden details that you didn't see in the past just because the image is just that much cleaner. Now let's take a look at Geist. Geist is a really cool game that was only ever made for the GameCube. It's basically a first-person shooter that sort of feels like Halo, but it actually isn't all very much like Halo since, well, you're also a ghost. It's really crazy and strange, but it's very fun to play. And again, just like the other examples we showed you, playing this game in progressive mode is a very big difference. The GCHD is really showing its it's worth here because you're just seeing so much more than you typically would have seen with the original composite cables included with the GameCube console itself. There are plenty of other games released on the GameCube that are worth talking about and showing off utilizing the GCHD, but I know why most of you are here, and that's for Super Smash Bros. Melee. If you're playing Super Smash Bros. Melee in a tournament setting, chances are you're using a CRT TV. Now the reason you're doing that is because you're trying to get the lowest amount of visual lag possible. CRT TVs are a lot faster than modern TVs because modern HD TVs are typically not very well equipped to deal with resolutions from standard definition and below. And that's basically what you're getting out of an original GameCube. But with this little adapter here, it doesn't seem to introduce any input lag or any delay in the image, so I was capable of playing Super Smash Bros. Melee pretty well. I mean, you know, I'm not professional or anything, but I personally didn't notice any delay. It felt like I was playing the game on a regular old CRT TV, despite the fact I wasn't. If you're looking to play Super Smash Bros. Melee utilizing newer televisions because they happen to be a little bit thinner and in some cases lighter than CRTs, this really might be the best way to do it. And as an added bonus, you'll be able to play the game in progressive scan mode, giving you a better visual representation of what you're doing in the game. And when it comes to tournament gameplay, any tiny little thing that can give you an advantage is something you really should be using. Needless to say, I'm incredibly impressed with the GCHD. It's a fantastic piece of hardware that is incredibly well designed. And if you have the ability to buy one of these to improve the quality of your existing GameCube library, I can't recommend it enough.